Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu ala alihi wa ashabihi wa azwajihi wa zurriyatihi wa ahli baytihi baraka sallama tasliman kathiran kathira. Amma ba'du. My brothers and sisters, we are in our session on living Islam, and we are talking about marriages. How to make a marriage and how to live that marriage. I want to begin with something very important, which is very often we hear this statement, and I mention these things, I mention what we hear because language reflects what's in the heart. Language reflects beliefs and attitudes, and language molds beliefs and attitudes. What we say reflects what is inside us. And if we consciously choose to change our language, then what is inside us also changes. That is a very well-known principle in psychology. If you, for example, if you develop the language of thankfulness, if you always focus on what is good around you, and you are thankful for it, and you express this in language, you actually say, Subhanallah, look at this beautiful color of so many leaves that are on the ground today. Instead of saying, oh my God, look at this trash, how untidy and dirty it is, all this dry leaf, when is somebody going to come and vacuum all these up? Same scene, two different ways of expressing what you are seeing. Both are truthful, and both will affect what happens on the heart. One will make you happy, the other one will make you unhappy, irritated, dissatisfied. Now the same thing applies throughout, and especially in marriages. I want you to understand one thing very clearly, which is that for two people, for a man and a woman, to be married and to be committed in a relationship for the whole of their lives. That is the intention, right? When you get married, that you are going to be married to the same man and the same woman, and this is going to be until death does us part, whether we use that term or not. In Islam, we don't use that term, but that is the intention. I mean, you're not getting married to get divorced in 5 years. Actually, if you entered into a marriage with a clear time when you will exit this marriage, which is what the muta marriages are, which is you get married for 3 weeks, you get married for 2 weeks. In Islam, this is haram. This is considered prostitution, because you are using that woman for your pleasure. You happen to be, it's like having, as they used to say about sailors of old, I don't know if modern day sailors follow the same glorious tradition, but they used to say that a sailor had a wife in each port, right? So just getting married to a woman just for convenience, because you are living in that place for a short while, you get married to her for 3 months, 3 years, whatever it was, but specific time, you know this, both of you know this, and you enter into this marriage. This is not possible in Islam because it is haram. That marriage itself, you cannot enter into that marriage because that is not called a marriage. Muta marriages are haram in Islam because they violate women's rights of dignity and a woman's right to have a life which is with commitment from her husband. Now, therefore, when you are entering into a marriage, you are entering into it with the understanding that this is a relationship of mine and I am going to be with the same woman for the rest of my life. Believe me, whether you like it or not, this is unnatural. It is not natural. The natural thing is for a person to have multiple partners throughout their life. Right? This is what mammals do. Multiple partners throughout their lives. But as I said before, to be civilized is to do that which does not come naturally. because it is better, because it is more dignified, because it is more just and fair because it has more pleasure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I'm saying it's unnatural, I'm not criticizing it, I'm saying that this is something which we must understand. It won't happen naturally. So therefore, if these two people are living together, then they must do something to ensure that the zest, the beauty, the pleasure, the comfort in the marriage continues and remains, and inshallah, with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, increases as you grow older together. And this is eminently doable. This is not impossible. This is eminently doable. But like anything else, it won't happen on its own. It takes effort. And the reason it takes effort is because of a concept which is called relatedness, as being as different from relationship, or it's a kind of relationship, but relatedness is the way in which you continue in a long-term relationship, despite the fact that what led to that relationship initially sometimes changes beyond recognition over the years. To give you another example, to illustrate this, let me give you another example of relatedness and where it succeeds and where it fails. And that is our relationship with our children. What is the generation gap? The generation gap is the inability to have relatedness. The inability to continue to relate to the child as the child grows, and the needs of the child change, the psychology of the child changes, the maturity of the child changes, the abilities of the child changes. Abilities of the child change. All of these things change where parents are able to respect that, where parents are able to adjust to that and continue to be related, there is no generation gap. But where parents somewhere lose track of this, and when they are seeing their 40-year-old, their 30-year-old, the turmoil age actually is the teenage years. You're seeing your 16-year-old, your 18-year-old, and you're still treating them the same way that you used to treat them, with love and affection, but you're treating them the same way that you used to treat them when they were 5 years old and 6 years old and 8 years old. That is where the generation gap comes and it expands. It's not that you don't love them anymore. You still love them, but you love them the way you loved them when they were 8 and 9 years old. Today they are 18 and 19. It's not the same human being. I remember reading somewhere many years ago that the whole body, all the body cells, they die and new cells are formed. And this entire thing, every 7 years, it is renewed. Right? So all the cells die and new cells. So every 7 years, you are a new human being. The only thing it doesn't refer, which is the only cells which are not affected are the neurons, which are in the brain and the heart. Otherwise, everything else is new, including the bones. So quite literally, I mean, I don't know if this theory is true or not, let the doctors and scientists tell you, but it said, anyway, psychologically speaking, this is definitely true, that you are looking at a different human being. The one that was 8 and 9 years old is not the same one which is 18 and 19, not the same one which is 29 and 30, not the same one which is 39 and 40 and so on. Different human being. It is the khudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you still recognize them, because features don't change. They don't change remarkably. I mean, they change to some extent, obviously. They do change. But not remarkably. It doesn't become unrecognizable. If you compare photographs taken over decades, you can still spot the person. Say, oh, that's the person. But you can see how remarkably people change. The problem is that the way we relate doesn't change. Now, the same thing applies to marriages. So, you married, when you got married, you were in your 20s, couple of years earlier, a couple of years later, but roughly that is the age that we generally get married at. And as you grow, you are now in your 40s, you are now in your 50s, you are now in your 60s. It's not the same person. It's a different person. Women actually, as far as their PMS is concerned, as far as the changes in the psychology is concerned, the changes in hormonal changes which happen, women as they grow older, apart when they reach menopause and older, they actually get a lot of male characteristics. Some physical, including beard and mustaches. You don't get it like mine, but they do get them. But they become more, bossy, more aggressive. In some cases, you might say, well, we are already at the peak. What is bigger? You will find out. Just live long enough. So I sometimes, my wife once told me. She said we get more bossy. So I said then, same-sex marriages are not permitted. You become a man. I'm already a man. Changes happen. Changes happen. Your body, you become weaker. You become, body starts paining more, and may Allah protect us from. May Allah protect us from being dependent on anyone other than Him, Jalla Jalaluhu. So the way we relate, in the 20s, the relationship is a lot more physical than psychological. In 40s, 50s, the relationship is much more psychological, much more has to be in terms of temperament. Taking care of each other emotionally, understanding each other's stresses. Many people don't understand. Many women, for example, who don't work, do not understand the mental stress that the husband has day in and day out. And it's easy to pass it off and saying, have tawakkul on Allah. Yes, of course we should have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We try our best. But Allah is the one who created this dunya. Allah is the one who created the situations. Allah is the one who created our ability to deal with it. Yes, we must have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some do, some don't. Some are weak. So what to do? They need support. Day in and day out. There's a film running in the back of the mind of the man, which is concern for the family, concern for the wife, concern for the children. Now, in some cases, I have relatives who are in their late 80s, who are still worried and concerned about their children who have grandchildren. Now, in one way of looking at it, it's ridiculous, right? It's complete nonsense. We say, forget it. Why are you bothered about that so-called child of yours who's in his 60s? He's got grandchildren, for God's sake. But ask the heart of a mother. Ask the heart of a father. It's not logic. It is not logic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it there. And therefore, that must be respected, and you have to honor that. So, this issue of compatibility, we tend to look at it from our perspective. Is so and so compatible to me? My submission is look at it from the perspective of what must I do to continue to be compatible. Ask yourself, you got married because you were compatible, right? You didn't get married to somebody you were completely non-compatible with. The minute you met him, the minute you met her, you said, La hawla la quwwata illa billah, this is shaitan or something. Right? Total, nothing, there's absolutely nothing in common. You wouldn't have got married. That did not happen. That did not happen. You liked something, you respected something. That is why respecting is, in my view, respecting is more important than loving. Because out of respect comes love. Love that comes without respect is like you loving a dog or something. I mean, you don't respect the dog, but you love the dog. I mean, hopefully your husband or wife is slightly better than that. So respect has to come before. And out of that respect comes love. And this love, the way it is expressed, changes with age, changes with time. And where it works, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The respect, the love, you don't have to say, it doesn't have to be, it has to be expressed, but not necessarily in so many words. I love you is not, Valentine's Day cards, all of this is not required. But it must be expressed. I keep on mentioning my grandparents, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill their qabur with nur and give them Jannatul Firdaus without hisab. I mean, 50 years later, I still remember my grandmother and my grandfather, the way their relationship was, subhanAllah. And we come from a culture where we are not demonstrative. I mean, we don't, hug each other in public or kiss each other in public or something. I never even, I'm now trying to recall it in the years that, I lived with them. As a child, we all lived in their house, so we lived in there. I never even saw my grandfather or my grandmother touching each other's hands. Forget about anything else. But the concern for each other, the love for each other, the respect for each other, this was so clearly evident. They had a beautiful, beautiful marriage. Alhamdulillah. So we have, alhamdulillah, good, examples that we see in our lives. My parents-in-law also, my wife's mother and father. May Allah grant them Jannatul Firdaus. Such concern for such love for each other, such respect for each other. Throughout. I've been married now 36 years. That's long enough to see two people together. The point I want to make in all of this is, this will not happen automatically. This will not happen automatically. I didn't have a heart-to-heart talk either with my grandparents or with my parents-in-law, asking them, did you have any troubles in your marriage? Did you have any ups and downs? I'm just saying every human being, every marriage, I'm sure 100%. There would have been things in their marriages which were up and down. There would have been places where they disagreed with each other. There would have been places where, but none of that poisoned the relationship. Because the relationship was based on this solid foundation of respect for one another and love for one another. So sure, you disagree. You don't have to agree on everything. So the term you always hear, how can the husband make the wife happy? How can the wife make the husband happy? Nobody can make anybody anything. Nobody can make anybody anything. We choose what emotions we want to feel and what we want to express and how we want to express them. The same thing angers someone and it makes somebody else laugh. Same behavior. It's up to us. So instead of saying, how can somebody make, you think about, how can I be happy? If you decide to be happy, nobody can unmake that. And if you decide to be miserable, nobody can unmake that. That's in your control. You decide what you want to do. You want to be miserable, go ahead. You want to be happy, go ahead. The other day, we are talking now, of course, about how much involvement should parents have in the marriage of their children. And I mentioned last time also, I'm saying it again, How much involvement should parents have in the marriage of their children? My answer is zero. No involvement at all. That doesn't mean don't be concerned about them. By all means, be concerned about them, no problem. I'm talking about the relationship between your son and his wife or your daughter and her husband. What should be your relationship in that relationship? Nothing. Zero. Ask yourself, are they adults? When you got them married, when they got married, were they adults? If they were not adults, then you made a mistake. There's no child marriage in Islam. So, if they were adults, leave them alone. Like any relationship, it takes the two working together for that relationship to mature, for that relationship to become solid and strong. And that working together process sometimes has friction. Friction produces heat. Heat is unpleasant. And so they complain. A friend of mine called me the other day and he said, my daughter called me and said that my mother-in-law is, troubling me, harassing me, whatnot. What shall I do? So I told him, first of all, tell her what she should not do, and which is to call you. Tell her that unless there is physical violence, unless the mother-in-law or your husband or somebody is beating you up, then please call. And call 911 before you call me. But unless there is physical violence, please don't call. Deal with it. You are an adult. So he accepted and he said, how should she deal with it? I said, I'll tell you, but I'm not sure whether your daughter will accept that. I'll tell you. He said, what? I said, tell her to take her mother-in-law to Macy's or to Bloomingdale's. Right? High upmarket store. Take her there and buy her a nice expensive gift. Tell her, Mom, pick what you want. Why are you doing that? Just like that. I love you. Take her. Tell a lie, no problem. This kind of a lie is permitted. Do that. Every time she tries to be nasty, take her shopping. Buy her something beautiful. Right? Don't buy her flowers. Indian mothers-in-law don't appreciate flowers. They need stuff. Do that. And the relationship will completely transform. Believe me. Do the opposite of what somebody expects you to do. There's a wonderful story about Harry Truman, the President of America. He was in his office and he was talking to some other head of state and it's not an altercation, but the other guy said to him, the other head of state, whoever it was, he said to him, don't even say it. I know exactly what you are going to say. I know exactly what you're going to do. So they say that Harry Truman then did a somersault on the carpet of the Oval Office and he stood up and he said, I bet you didn't think I would do that. And that broke the ice and then they had a good conversation. So do something which is completely unexpected in a positive way. And then see how things change. So leave them alone. I have seen many marriages getting destroyed by the parents. And usually it is the mothers. The fathers are not exempt from this, but at least the majority of cases which I have seen, it's always the mothers. Telling the daughter, giving her a blow-by-blow advice of what to say, what to do. Or telling their sons blow-by-blow advice of how to treat his wife. And that son and that daughter are stupid enough and dumb enough to listen to that. Listen to that garbage. I have to sift between the words in my mind. So please, you must do your part also. So if the mom calls and says, so what did she say today? Or what did he say today? Tell her, Mom, the weather, it's so nice. It's getting cold now, and I just brought out all the woolens, and we just started our heating. No, no, I'm not talking. I'm asking, what did your husband say? What did your wife say? Mom, we are planning to go on an Alaskan cruise. You get the point I'm saying? Very politely, let them understand. If necessary, say it to them in so many words. Some people are, slow on the uptake. In so many words, say, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, I will not tell you. Please don't ask me, I will not tell you. Right? Let them be offended, doesn't matter. This is your right as a human being, as a Muslim, as an individual, not to share your private life with somebody else, whoever that somebody else is. Nobody has a right to know your private life. Keep it private. Sit and have a face-to-face conversation with your wife or your husband. That is 1,000 times better than telling your mother or your father or your grandmother or whoever it is, outsider, about what is happening in your relationship and taking their advice and applying it in your relationship. That is a recipe for disaster. Believe me. If you don't believe me, try it out. And when you come out of the divorce court, then come back to this lecture and listen to it. Right? Your private life, spend time with your spouse. Talk to them. Understand them. Learn about them. Respect what they do. Show that respect. Show that appreciation. Don't take it for granted. I told you, it's a highly unnatural relationship. In the best of ways, but it is unnatural. Respect that. And inshallah, you will be very successful. I'm not saying neglect your mother or father, but remember that your spouse has first call after you get married. The key is to realize that these are all independent relationships and they need to be managed. The same is true of children when they come along. I have seen spouses becoming strangers to each other because children take up that much of time and energy of both to such an extent. Maturity, to become mature, is to be able to handle these multiple relationships in marriage. Everything in its own place. This is Islam. Everything in its own place. You don't mix up the boundaries. You do not mix up the boundaries. Everything in its own place. Give each one their due. And everyone will be happier for that. If you don't do that, then you are taking away the rights of one for the sake of the other. Now this one is, for one thing, it is injustice, and therefore it is not something that as Muslims we should be doing. And second thing is, as I told you, this will only result in unhappiness all around. Each one must get its due. And then, of course, inshallah, you will have a beautiful marriage. Truly, somebody asked as an Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he says, what is heaven on earth? And he said, Imratu Salih. He said, a good wife, a pious wife, a good wife. And of course, the same thing applies the other way around, a good husband. This can be heaven on earth. And that is not magic. It is not Rule, it is not chance, it is not a dartboard. That is made. Marriages are not made in heaven. Marriages are made on this earth so that your life then becomes heaven on this earth. They are made with effort, and they are made with effort by both parties, husband and wife. I wish you all a very, very happy marriage, which is very satisfying and which becomes something that you truly, truly value. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.